Yeah, it's
So
fun
yeah,
though.
what do you want to start with then? Music or podcast, Jay?
Um, let's just go podcast because I can get it out of the way for myself
Okay.
because I don't have very many to pick from.
Do you want to hear our hosts picks
That's
first?
what I'm thinking.
Let's start with that. We'll start off with our host picks for this type of thing. So let me just double check something here. Julie, she did give me a list here, but I don't think she included uh
Podcast.
podcasts on hers.
It's okay.
Yeah, so she only gave me albums, music and movies this year, so she didn't give me podcasts.
Tis. She's
And
because she only watches artists. That's why.
actually, somebody who I think that didn't have a list for podcasts last year actually has a list this year, which surprised me. So here we go. So and coming in at number 3, we got 3 on this list anyways for Rob. Rob, I believe, never had podcasts on his list, at least last year. I guess made a bit of an effort this year to listen to some. He at number 3, he's got the Mel Robbins podcast. Do
Okay.
you know who that is?
No.
Okay. I'm not too familiar with that.
I wonder if it's a sports collector or something.
Maybe I'll have to look it up here.
Yeah.
Number 2, we come in at number 2, we got the Bad Parents podcast, which I had looked up. I wasn't familiar with the people that run this show either, but I think that looks more of like a comedy thing. And coming in at number 1, this one I am familiar with, is the Spit and Chicklets podcast, which is part of the Barstool guys,
Yeah.
and they are like an ex hockey player, and I think one of them's like another sports. I don't know if it's football or what's this one all
This
about.
is Mel
Oh, the
Robbins.
Mel Robbins podcast.
Yeah.
Uh,
Motivation and tactics. Good
okay,
job.
cool. But yeah, the Spitting Chicklets guys, I've seen their videos before. Like I've seen some videos of them on YouTube before. I'm familiar with like the Barstool people, so yeah, I could see that to be an entertaining podcast. That one. But yeah, so did you want to say I so apparently there was like a hand delivered list as always, because someone doesn't like actually sending a list out, a personal hand delivered list
Personally written too.
given to JT.
No. I had to write it too. Don't forget that.
In the same fashion as she busted out during her last our music challenge that we had at our episode 200, I believe it was, right?
Oh,
Or
she's
225.
she's a last minute chick. That's what we call her.
Of course, from our of course, Leslie, aka Leslie Stats here. Let's of the Late Night Chat Network, of course. Yeah, go ahead.
So of course, I mean, she's got 5. She does listen to quite a few podcasts. She was telling me, and she was having a hard time, picking from them. So it was funny because I didn't even have that much to waste time on, right? So at number 5, she's got This Little Light of Mine, and I think it's the guy from the Chili Peppers, Flea, or is that his name?
Yeah,
Okay, Flea
yeah.
from the Chili Peppers, right? And I just thought that was a weird name, so that's what threw me off. Number 4, she's got Trust Me, which is another podcast, which it's kind of scary when it's on Leslie's list. Okay, and another one, Disgraceland. I'm thinking these are true crime stuff, and maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. And another one, this one is coming in at number 2, and it's got a great title, Asshole Court.
She's talked about that one before. Yeah,
She
she's
likes Asshole Court.
yeah, she mentioned that one before on the show. I guess we should have also looked for a description of these things before we also mention them here on
Well,
the
that's
show
the thing
for
is
them.
because I
Yeah.
didn't really get a description from her. I got
Yeah.
because she was having such a hard time picking which one she wanted.
Who would have thought that you had this hard of a time with podcasts,
Podcasts,
right?
right?
Yeah, no, that's
But I mean, it's
so
not that she had a hard time. It's that she had a hard time determining because she listens to quite a few now, right?
yeah. I mean,
Which I thought was a
she could also mention some honorable mentions if she was having that much of a struggle, right?
yeah.
Asshole Court is 3 lifelong friends examine well-known notorious public figures and determine on an 11-point system of how much of an asshole they really are. That sounds like a fun one. Yeah, yeah. What was the other one that you
I
mentioned?
wonder if she's
Disgraceland.
ever looked at and put us in a category. I wonder where I'm
She
listed on that category.
she's mentioned that podcast before on the show. I
Yeah,
remember her mentioning it. Yeah, and Disgraceland is another true crime podcast
yeah.
about musicians getting away with murder, specifically musicians, and behaving very badly.
Ooh,
So there you go. Yeah.
I never knew there was
Yeah, like it's
something
like
about
Graceland.
musicians.
Instead of
Yeah.
Graceland, it's Disgraceland,
Okay,
right?
it
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense now.
interesting.
Makes sense
Okay,
now.
okay. Yeah.
Is there one called what's Michael Jackson's place called? Never Neverland.
Yeah.
But no, but
Yeah.
I did my own beat too. My own drum beat there, and number one for her, and I think probably just like quite a few people this year, and maybe not on us, but she's got the right one. She's got the Smart List podcast, which I think
Nice.
I think yeah, I think blew everybody away by surprise this year. To be honest with you.
So yeah, no, that's a good one. And so Spittin' Chicklets also from
Oh,
Rob's
sorry.
list, just to kind of give a little explanation of what that is. Yeah, it's former NHL vets Ryan Whitney, Paul Bissonnette,
Oh, he's
and
talked about that to me. Yeah,
yeah. They're part of Barstool Sports.
yeah,
So I've seen them before on some of the Barstool Sports stuff. And they sell like alcohol now and stuff like that.
yeah.
So that's that Pink Whitney shit that his wife
Oh,
likes, right? Like that's hence the Ryan Whitney. Like he's the
yeah.
one that kind of created that. So yeah, he and sports writer, rear admiral, and producer Mike Grinnell bring their outspoken and irreverent opinions about sports and other things. Yeah. So yeah, that's the podcast, Spittin' Chicklets. Yeah,
So
I've seen. They also have an Instagram like account I've seen before. Like a lot of like the rowdy sports shit and stuff like that happens in the world of sports. Like
take a
they
deep dive.
they have
A dive.
clips. They have clips from it,
Yeah.
and again, like yeah, very kind of opinions that you wouldn't normally hear from obviously analysts that work for the
Well, that's what I was gonna ask because I
right.
thought it sounded like one of them was maybe one of the guys from I keep thinking these sports guys, man. I see a lot of them that do on the middle of the commercials and stuff on TV and stuff, and they always talk about podcasts
Mhm.
and maybe about stuff that they do. So I don't know which ones they ever have.
Yeah.
So I have to see. I have to check it out, man.
Yeah. So I like again, I was aware of them, so that's kind of cool that to see that he put them as number one
Mhm.
on his list, just because I've never listened to it, and just bringing up Lewis's list here. But yeah, that's kind of cool. I might have to give that one a listen. And of
Yeah.
course, it's always fun getting into the conversation of podcasts because we also are all involved in our own podcast here.
It's
So
kind of
like
a trip. Yeah.
it is good to go out and listen to what else is out there, honestly. So I'm happy to see that almost everybody on our team here today was able to give us a list of that. And I know Julie normally does listen to them, so maybe she just didn't have a list or she just
Yeah. It
didn't
could have been
have
like
the
two.
time this year, right? So I know she's very, very busy, right? Like that.
Yeah. Could have been just something that she wasn't. Maybe she couldn't decide. Right.
So Lewis's list here, his podcast coming in at number 5. He's got the ongoing history of new music, which I believe was on his list maybe even last year. I know he likes that one.
Of new music.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then coming in at number 4, a show that I introduced you to this year that I saw on YouTube, Dudesy. That's the one with the AI and
Yeah.
Will Sasso, of
That's
course.
kind of
Will
weird.
Sasso of
Yeah.
Mad TV, where he's actually got an AI running the fucking podcast for him, which is really it's a weird one. Yeah, but Will Sasso's fucking hilarious, and the fact that he's able to riff off of an AI
Yeah.
is you know what I mean? Like, there's no other show out there doing that, like at least that I'm aware of. Like, that was the first one I've ever heard that was actually embracing the AI thing, because so many people in entertainment were kind of scared away by the fact that AI could take over in some sense, right? Like, especially like writing jokes and this kind of thing. But the AI, if you ever watched that show, bro, the AI like fucking opens up the show, and then like they take some off on so many different like weird directions that they wouldn't have gone in like a regular conversation with a human being. You know what I mean? Like weird tangents and shit like that, right?
I can
And like,
imagine what
yeah.
it'd be like talking to fucking AI. Or it's already starting with my Spotify, right?
Yeah. So next up, we got number 3, The Last Podcast on the Left, which I think that's a true crime one, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it is. You want to look that up, Jay? I think that's the case. And coming in at number 2, Last Podcast on the Left. I think that's one that that Leslie used to listen to at some point too, if I'm not mistaken. I might be, though. I think that's a true crime podcast.
Yeah, heading into all things horror.
A horror podcast. Okay. I think it's like they also cover some true crime stuff on there as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I think it's a
podcast on the left.
But I think it's more of like I think they kind of look at it as more of like a comedy kind of like
iconic hauntings and crimes and stuff like that. That's what they talk about.
Okay, cool.
Killers, all that crap.
Cool. Yeah, that's a very
That's crazy,
popular
man.
one. That's a very popular one. I've heard a lot about that. And now, like, the guy that's one of the hosts on that now has written a comic this past year. He's like, I think they're very into geek culture, these guys. Like, yeah. So like, I know that they're kind of working their, and if you go to these Comic Cons and stuff like that, there's always a big horror presence there in terms of like horror movies, horror movie icons, you know what I mean? Like people that want to take pictures with people that were like, the scream queens from films and like the Freddy and shit like that, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's always a big presence of that kind of stuff. Coming in at number 2, no surprise from Lewis, Comedy Bang Bang, the podcast. He's loved this podcast for years. I've heard him talk about it before. Honestly, I had a hard time getting into it. It's a very particular type of humor, but I honestly haven't listened to enough of the shows. I feel like they've done so much and they've been around for so long. It's kind of daunting at this point for me to kind of get into it. Yeah. Like I think I would like it if I listened to it, but like, I just like, it seems like it's like a cult. You know what I mean? Like the people that, no, you know what I mean though? Like the people that are into it are into it.
What I was talking about with the podcast called. Remember?
Like, yeah. Like I know people that have gone to like the live showings of the podcast and stuff like that. Right. Which me and Lewis actually did this year. We went to the Bad Friends podcast. So
that's all right.
That was pretty fun. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, Freedom. It's called Freedom, and he put it's a comedy podcast. Relax. So I actually looked this one up. Yeah, Lewis added comments to his, by the way. Of course, very Lewis thing to do. I actually looked this one up. This is a with some of the guys from Comedy Bang Bang.
Okay.
Also with the actress Lauren Lupkis or whatever her name is. I like her. She's good. I think
from what?
She's in lots of things. She's I think that's how you pronounce her name. Lauren Lupkis. Yeah. If you look her up, you'll see her. She's in lots of things. But she's one of the hosts on this show too. And I think it's with her and some of the Comedy Bang Bang people. I don't know if she's like part of that group or, but when I looked it up, because I was curious by the fact that he had to explain it's a comedy podcast, what this one was. That's what I did look up. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Because I didn't try to spend too much time on people's lists. You know?
I'm trying to look at even
right. So, all right. So that's our hosts' picks, guys, for their favorite podcasts of 2023. Great job. Yeah, great start, guys.
Did get into a lot of them. Man, I'm surprised.
So Jay, I guess I'll just I'll swing it back over to you so you can let us know about your favorite podcast of 2023.
Oh, I got a couple.
Go ahead.
I've listened to a few, but the problem is I didn't really listen to them as much as I listened to one podcast.
So remember, we're going back and forth. So say one,
yes,
and then it goes back over to me. Yeah.
So you want me to say my number 1 first or my number last?
You go last to first. Okay. Yeah,
I only got 4. I can't think of a fifth one. I couldn't.
What came in at number 4?
Number 5 was us, man. That's it.
There you go. There
you go. Okay, because I can't think of a last one that
there you go
that I listened to. So
number 5 is us.
I decided I throw it in, and that's a podcast about nothing.
No, you know what you say? Our new show, Watching the Throne.
There you go. Oh, fuck, man.
Because we put in a lot of work on that show.
I got books full of it, man. Like seriously.
So good. That's Jay's number 5 pick is Watching the Throne with 2 co-hosts, Nico and JT, as they watch along with many great guests this year as well. Don't forget.
We've had Late Night Collectors community. What the fuck? We can't, I can't leave that A station out, right?
No, it's the B station with the A content.
Yeah, well, so I'm giving you the A right away. So there you go.
Yeah, and of course, over in the Late Night Collectors community. Shout out to me and Chris, who 51 episodes of Comic Shop Talk this year, as well as our year-end media review type thing, our year-end award show, which I guess I forgot to plug at the start of this episode. That'll be coming out this week too. Yeah, thank you, Jay. That will be coming out this week too, guys. So if you want to hear our best of the year, make sure to tune in for that. All right.
People laugh. Sorry, I don't know where that came from.
So let's see. For mine, we'll get into my number 5 then. What do I got here? Let's see here. For honorable mentions for me, I'll just throw out the fact that like the comedy podcast this year, I kind of fell off of some of the comedy podcasts this year. Like I didn't really listen to them as much. Like 2 Bears in One Cave has barely had those 2 together on this year. I know we talked about it with Jay in our last episode, Late Night Chat. Tom and Bert were barely together. I feel like on that show this year, there's a lot of episodes where they had different guests on and stuff like that. And I think that show, which was I think on a lot of our lists last year, just wasn't as good. I feel like this year. You know, I would also say like depending on like the guest on the show for some of these comedy podcasts, I would check it out, but not religiously. Like I was watching a lot of these comedy podcasts last year, and I just didn't really watch any of these on any consistent basis this year to kind of give them anything other than an honorable mention. Even Bad Friends, which I will mention, like I love Bad Friends. Me and like I said, Lewis went to see them live this year. Of course, that's with host Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee, and then you also have Bobby Lee's podcast outside of Bad Friends, the other podcast that he does with his ex-girlfriend now, Kalila, that they do. Which is a lot of fun as well, right?
It'd be fun. Are you doing a podcast?
It's awkward. It was awkward. It was awkward when it first happened. Like they separated, and people thought that was going to be the end of the podcast, but yet it wasn't. So,
I mean, you know, business partners at the end of the day. It's, you know,
even Theo Vaughn's podcast has been pretty fun when I've checked in on that one. That one's been pretty good. But yeah, no, I that's why those are all like honorable mentions for me, but I won't get into them too much, honestly, those ones, because they all just didn't make the top 5 list because I just feel like I didn't check in on them very frequently throughout the year. But every now and then, you know, depending on the guest, if I needed a laugh, those are great. All these comedy podcasts, there's so many of them now. Every fucking comedian has a podcast now that's a popular comedian at this point, right? Out there, and they all go on each other's shows as well to promote shit. So like some weeks, depending on who's doing the rounds, you can see a lot of great podcasts, like comedy podcasts, and there's nothing better when you're seeing two comedians riff with one another on a podcast. At
comedians are the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
absolutely
hard. I wish I was a fucking comedian.
Yeah, we try. But yeah, coming in at number 5 though. Shout out to Jay, of course, and it sounds like Leslie coming in at her number one as well. Smartless. I've been watching it. I did not tell Jay purposely because it was gonna make my list. But the last couple of months, I've been. That's why it's a late entry onto the top 5. But it's the one that I've known about for a long time. I've been meaning to watch for a long time. I even watched a couple of the episodes of them on tour, like the tour that they did.
That was different. That was fun.
Yeah. Kind of seeing them like kind of act outside, like just in their everyday lives with each other. Like, and you know what? The best thing about the show, and I'm sure it's going to come up soon in your list as well, spoilers, but we will get there when we get there, because I'm sure you got a lot more of it to say than me, because I'm kind of new to it. It is a chemistry between these guys. Honestly, you can tell they're actually friends. Like they have great chemistry. They also have a weird,
bond?
What?
Like a sick, weird bond, I think.
Bond,
like a relationship.
Sure, but like they have like a because they're not traditional interviewers, obviously, because they're all comedic actors and stuff like that. Sean actually is.
Sean was nominated for like an interviewer of the year.
Because of the podcast,
but
they always make fun of how the stupid fucking questions that he asks on that show. Right?
He really does think. If you really do, you think about it. And he thinks about his questions. Right?
He does. Like whenever he brings a guest on, compared to the other guys, he seems to be a little bit more prepared. Absolutely. I know that's a running joke of him. You know, the same with the running joke about his sister. They have to break down everything for his sister, who's never actually present, right? But they, these Hollywood terms that they use. Oh, is his dad now?
No, his dad is the best, because his dad left when they were a kid, so they make jokes about his dad running away when he was a kid.
I've heard, yes.
Is that what he was like when he was running away from you? Like,
but that's what I mean. There's no like limit to when they make fun of each other. Like, so awesome. Like, because they're friends. That's what I mean. Like, it's nice and refreshing to hear people that really don't give a shit of how they come off with each other to everybody else, because they know at the end. Yeah, well, because at the end of the day, they know where they stand with one another, and like, and again, watching that show, the little bit that I watched, you definitely get that from watching the show as well. Like, this isn't put on; these guys actually are friends, and like any friends, there's times that they're gonna annoy each other. There's gonna be times that they, drive each other nuts, honestly, and make each other laugh. And I love Will Arnett already. Like Jason Bateman, I've also loved for a long time. Sean Hayes, I know from his television stuff, but I've never really watched him outside of maybe the random show here and there. But he's a nice guy. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I like him. I just don't really.
He's strong too.
He's strong. Yeah. What do you mean?
Keep going.
See, this guy knows all the inside jokes from this show. I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm not as familiar with him. But honestly, it's a funny fucking show, and they have great guests on it because of who they are in terms of like their success in Hollywood. They have guests that I feel like you don't see on any other podcast. Some of
No,
these
seriously,
guys.
they like outdo each other.
They do,
They
and
have
and
to.
and I like the structure of the show, the way that they make it secret, like who the guest is. Like they each have an assignment each show
Oh,
to
it's
bring
fucking
on a
awesome.
guest,
Yeah.
and they have to guess who the guest is, and they kind of lead them in. And I was gonna say, like the way they interview people, because they're not traditional interviewers by nature, is just is weird and different for a show. Honestly,
Oh, yeah.
they do a good job of it, but it's not what you would expect. The way they kind of go into it, like it is just a normal conversation. Sometimes I feel like they don't do a great job of interviewing people per se, but then they have a good conversation still out of it. They're
They have
able
their
to,
off the phone like a phone call basically.
yeah.
They don't see each other as much because they live in different areas and stuff. And when they do, they have to. But
No, but what I mean is just it's an unorthodox approach. The way they kind of
doing a
you know what I
podcast.
mean? Like, yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think it's bad. I don't
No.
want to. I just think
No.
it's not like it's very different than other podcasts out there. The way they approach things is
Yeah.
what I mean that in the highest compliment.
Yeah.
And this guy hasn't shut up about it this fucking year. So yeah, there you go. Number 5, it made my list. Are you happy? I did. That was my big surprise to you on the show because that was one I didn't think he saw coming. Because he kept saying, "Oh, you're gonna listen to this." So I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "I know it's out there. I'll listen to it." And the last couple of months, the only thing I'll say though,
you did listen to a lot of different things. That
Yeah.
weren't specific to or specific things.
The only thing I'll say though is that I wish that they fucking did a video podcast version of it. They only have an audio version on YouTube, which I've been basically using. I kind of use that more so if I'm at work or something, as opposed to using the actual podcast on the app, like through the audio. I will just throw it on YouTube. I've done both for the show, but I just don't know why they don't have an audio version of their podcast where every other podcast out there like that has one now.
Well, I feel like Will Arnett is the type of guy who's gonna fucking market it the right way, and he's gonna come out with the rest of them recorded because they are on camera. They do a Zoom sort
Right.
of thing, like a Zoom call with whoever, and they maybe the people that they do get on there don't want to be videoed. There's certain people they've had a president on there. They've had the
Right.
ex-presidents. They've they
And if
haven't
that makes
fucked
them
around.
feel more comfortable in that sense and get like them kind of
Yeah.
like more down to earth and approach, as opposed to like showing up at a studio
'Cause
like
they
the
see
rest of
each
these
other.
I
Yeah.
think the rest of these comedy podcasts. No, I know they're like on a Zoom call and something. I'm just saying some people even put like, look what we do. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like some
exactly.
people put that out there, right? And
Mm.
I just think it would be interesting to see some of these people, obviously, but maybe there's a lot of editing that goes on behind the scenes that we
No, I
don't really.
believe.
Right. So there you go. The
Jason
best.
Bateman is a little bit fucked up with the way he looks.
What
He's like me. He's puffy.
I'll
Too much
end
salt.
I'll end my critique about this because I'm sure it's gonna come up in JT's list. He's gonna have a lot to say of it. But with this, one of my favorite moments ever was it with yeah, I think it was McConaughey when they actually got him on the show. Correct me if I'm wrong because I know you like that episode. I think it was him. Jason Bateman had a meltdown because they were supposed to fucking have him on already, like previous to the time they had him on, and he came on his computer. It was like Jay with his updates.
Yes, don't
his
even
computer,
get
his
that.
update, his computer wouldn't fucking work.
Nothing.
No, but you know how refreshing that was that they
Yeah.
shared that,
Yeah.
like honestly, like because like
So they rebooked the guy.
I love that they talked about that happening though, because some people would try to like sweep that under the rug. Oh, that never happened. But it's so much funnier when people talk about behind the scenes bullshit that happens. That's why we've always had a fun time talking about it on the show, like we have. Like it's because it's true. Shit like that happens. And he had to like use his daughter's computer and like it wasn't working. And you can hear Jason Bateman like get so frustrated. I've been there. It was just like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to do another fucking day then, whatever. And then he doesn't know McConaughey because they have this surprise guest that doesn't reveal themselves in the background is listening to this.
The whole thing.
And he gets off the call. He just flies off the call. Like he fucking loses his shit. He came back from a bad round of golf apparently. And then he gets on the fucking podcast and he just flips out because his computer isn't working. He's like, well, no, I guess we're gonna have to do it another time or whatever. And Will Arnett just starts fucking laughing. He's like, what the fuck is going on? Right? Like, and this guy just laughed. And then you can hear McConaughey making fun of him. Like he's like after he fucking hung up. And Bateman didn't know, and they replayed it when McConaughey came on the show, and he was so fucking embarrassed by it. It's the fucking funniest thing I think I've heard this year, honestly. It was so good. That's the only reason it made my top. My
It's the
fifth.
most viewed episode too,
Right.
right?
Oh,
thing.
McConaughey is great
Yeah.
as a guest too.
Oh, fuck.
I wish I listened to more because it may have made it may have gone lower on my list, but I had to make the list because for that moment alone, when I heard that, I'm like, that's the fucking funniest thing
I
I
don't
ever
even
heard.
know what to even call McConaughey anymore. He's like the fucking god, man, over there in fucking Texas or wherever.
Yeah. Well,
He's just that kind of
yeah,
person.
yeah,
He's great. Man.
Yeah.
I've
So,
even
anyways,
interviewed
go ahead. Give us your number 4.
my number 4. I got to listen to some of I checked out some of those Drink Champs stuff, that you talk about.
Yes.
Yes, and it's funny, bro. I just sometimes I'm not a big fan of what's his name interviewing, man. Everybody getting fucking.
We've talked about this
Yes,
before.
we did this on the mid-year
yeah.
too, right? Because
This made my list last year, but then
Yeah.
I don't feel I was consistent again with it this year, like
No.
because I watched it a lot last year,
yeah,
right?
and I didn't get a chance to see any of it because it's a lot of it's the YouTube stuff. and
Yeah.
it's actually funner to watch it on the YouTube.
Yeah, you're talking about Noriega.
Noriega.
Yeah, Noriega and Capone, Capone and Noriega. Yeah, he's not a great interviewer. No,
None of that. I don't think any of it. Like I said, and we said this before too. I think it's the alcohol makes the fun part of it.
Yes,
Could make the dangerous part of it, but it also makes for the fun part of it, right?
exactly.
So don't do drugs, guys.
Well, that was and that's why I think some people have criticized the show. Honestly, they've gotten some criticisms over the years because they've had some entertaining guests come on there and say a lot of shit, but then they've also had people like somebody like Kodak Black come on the show this year, who people are like, he seems really fucked up and not very well right now, and you kind of bringing him on the show and parading him around there. Like some people were kind of happy for it because they're like, thank you for giving this guy a chance. And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to read between the lines and be like, sometimes it's not worth it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes
it could trigger it.
Yeah. So like there's people that he brings on there sometimes that have had like abuse issues and stuff like that for drugs and stuff like that. And come on. And maybe they'll spin a few good stories and we'll find entertainment out of it. But at the end of the day, and he's giving him his flowers and everything else as they do on that show. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's people on there that they're not in the best shape of their lives right now. And he's bringing them on there and we're finding entertainment out of it. Right. So I
really at the end of the day,
I get that part of it.
Entertainment, right?
I don't care. I'm not judging him for that, but I know some people in the hip hop community have. Because they're like, why are you letting this fucking guy on here? He's a mess. You know what I mean? Like
it could lead to a lot worse things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could lead to a lot of
but it's never ill and there's never bad intentions. He's there to fucking celebrate the person. Like that's kind of why he brings the people on.
But then there's always that one fucking line, and once the alcohol kicks in and everything, there's always that one sentence that fucking can throw anybody into a tangent.
Right.
And that's what you got to be careful about.
Yes. Yes.
These guys probably have big security all standing around everywhere in that fucking room that you don't see on Reddit.
But sometimes they talk about old school hip hop stories. Like
that's what you want to hear.
He came up with all these dudes in the 90s. You know what I mean? So if he has like a Fat Joe on there or a fucking you know what I mean? Like Nas or something. Like those are great fucking episodes, man. Like that's what I mean.
But you can talk to them like normal people because
he came up with them. Yeah.
He grew up with them.
I feel the ones that he has where he has people on that are more new school guys, he doesn't relate as much to them because they're not from like Brooklyn or they're not from New York. You know what I mean? I think
it's
those.
Hard, man.
Yeah.
I could find it being hard. It's just like anybody trying to relate with somebody younger, younger, right?
Yeah. So but again, depending on the guest, it's a good show still. I agree with you. Yeah. Okay. So my next pick for my number 4 is the Video Archives podcast with Quentin Tarantino and his co-host Roger Avery, and of course his daughter Gala Avery, who helps out with some of the stuff that they do on the show as well. This may have made it lower on my list if one, they didn't go throughout the whole year. The show ended in June. I don't think I listened to the last month or so of the show, but they kind of are doing it they said, oh, season 1 is done all of a sudden in June. And I guess they're doing it for an approach of they're only going to be recording so many episodes a year, I guess, if they continue it. Because I guess, Quentin Tarantino's a busy guy. So the fact that he did this podcast this year was really cool. And being a big fan of Quentin Tarantino, of course, I was going to listen to a Quentin Tarantino podcast, right? And this is him with his buddy Roger Avery, who's also successful in terms of being producer films and maybe director as well, or written stuff. He's worked in Hollywood as well. Roger Avery, he has a lot of success very successful dude as well. And
Name
they
I heard.
actually worked at the Video Archives, the LA location, the video store back in the day.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the whole idea behind this podcast, is because for anybody who doesn't know, Quentin Tarantino worked at a video store before he made it big as a director. And this is where he kind of cut his teeth and like was able to kind of talk with folks, you know, kind of like we do when we talk about stuff that we enjoy here on the show, or when I do the stuff with the comics, stuff that folks that are also into movies as much as he is, right? Because and he met Roger Avery working there back in the day, and they became lifelong friends because of it. And they both went on to actually work in films. So like it's kind of cool in that sense. And Quentin Tarantino bought all of the old stock from the Video Archives store that shut down years ago. He bought it all.
Okay.
And this is somewhere that he used to work up till the early 90s.
Yeah.
And he now has transformed a room of his house into the fucking Video Archives store. So he has VHSs of all the films that they had in their store when they worked there in the 90s in his fucking house. And he has a room that's dedicated to this. So it's like you walk in there apparently, and it's like you're walking into the past. Like this is like, and him and Roger Avery pick out movies from the VHS collection that they would have seen and talked about in the store that they used to work at out of all the VHSs, and review them and do kind of deep dive conversations on like about two to three movies each episode that they do.
Okay. So
and they watch it on fucking VHS. They take the VHS tape, they run it into a fucking thing, they watch it on a TV together, and then they get on the podcast and they review it and they go through it and they talk about what they like and everything else, or what they like or don't like about this. And they try to have theme episodes and they have guests on sometimes. It's just such a cool fucking idea for people that love movies as much as these fucking guys. Like, what a trip. What a trip. Yeah, it's just what a trip that they actually do that and they get enjoyment out of it like that, right? And the only thing I'll say is like there's like high snob, like fucking high snobbery kind of aspect to it as well, because he's such a film aficionado. Some like 90% of the time, the movies that they talk about, I've never fucking seen. So there's only so much enjoyment sometimes I can get out of the episodes, like hearing them critique movies that I've never actually seen. Like,
I mean, these like fucking 2-star movies or whatever that would have
sometimes like because they find things that they like about them because they're such a fan of film. Not all of them. Some of them are well-regarded films, but you got to remember these are also older films, like from back pre-90s, right? So there's a lot of things that I feel like I haven't seen. Right. And like, and like, I don't think some of these would be considered classics, at least to most people, but obviously because they have a higher appreciation of film, they see
something in it.
Exactly. So like, I understand that part. But I gotta say, there's some movies that they have talked about on the show that have actually went and seeked out as a result of listening to the show. So it's good in that aspect as well.
Okay. So that's the type of style of podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's a movie review type thing. It's basically like what you used to do with our older movie reviews. The older movies. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, they obviously do it different, but because they usually talk about like 2 or 3 of them in an episode, so they kind of spend a little bit less time on it. But Quentin Tarantino blabs on so fucking fast about everything. Like he's very like, you know what I mean? Like he this guy knows how to talk. Like, you know what I mean? Like, So
I know what you mean.
Yeah, shut up. No, but it's just because he like when someone loves something as much as he does, like it's so easy for him to explain, like, and be adamant and like precise about what he is trying to the points that he's trying to make about the films, right? Like, so that's what I mean. It's a great conversation. Like, I'm a big fan of Quentin Tarantino. I bought his book this year, or Christine bought it for me. I've yet to finish it. Actually, I'm about halfway through it. It's called Cinema Speculation, and that's basically him breaking down a bunch of movies that he saw in his youth that kind of helped form him, like, inform his films, like basically inspired him to go off and make his own movies, essentially, right? So it's some great stuff. So
that, and what's it called?
Cinema Speculation. That's a book that he came out with this year, or just late last year, I guess. So that's he was doing the book tour, and he went on the Two Bears One Cave podcast actually as a guest with Tom Segura, and he called Tom Segura out for not reading the book.
Oh,
So that was
sucks.
entertaining. If you guys want to watch that, watch the Quentin Tarantino episode of Two Bears, One Cave, where Quentin Tarantino, like, who suffers no fools, was just like, you didn't read the book, did you? And he's like, well, I looked at it or something. Like, Tom's just like, he's like, well, listen. He's like, I thought the questions were good, because he's basically this is at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
He just calls him out for it.
Yeah.
And Tom, like, fucking, like, sheepishly, like, tries to defend the interview. But, like, he just looked bad. You know what I mean? Like, he's trying not to, right? Like,
sometimes
you don't have time
I
to do it.
know.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
But you have somebody like Quentin Tarantino on your fucking podcast. You better
make time.
Exactly.
Nico would make time. Nico would even take a shower.
He was that's right.
See?
I showered earlier today. What are you trying to say? I smell?
No, I'm just fucking making
What is wrong with this guy?
conversation, man.
All right, moving
Like a
on.
haircut.
Go ahead.
I love that word.
You're number 3.
I'm listening to still Uncle Joey in the check-in, man, because that guy, I think they might end up the podcast might end up that's it. They might end up just ending it. It wasn't
because it used to be Uncle Joey's joint.
It's called the check-in, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the new one with
yeah.
his old producer that he used to get fucking high off at Lee Sayat.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck, bro.
They
Those
talk
guys-
about that. I've
yeah.
seen some of those episodes. Yeah, they're good.
But they it was just I've been going back listening to everything, but now you can actually check it on YouTube. I didn't even know that. Like, I don't even know that half these guys record because I'm always listening to.
That's
it on
where I've
Spotify.
seen it. It's
No, I
on
know,
YouTube. Yeah.
But I'm always listening to it on Spotify, and I'm always listening to it, while I'm at work or while I'm doing stuff. So it's going.
JT, of course, is talking about the comedian Joey Diaz.
Joey Diaz,
Yeah,
man.
and,
I keep thinking he's gonna die any minute, man. He's like one of those.
no,
guys,
he's
bro.
cleaned up his
I
life.
know,
He
I know,
moved back
but
to New York
He's still
from LA.
overweight and fucking, you can even hear it still when he talks, bro. Like in the breathing, it's
But
there,
he
man.
talks about he does meditation and yoga and all
he's
this kind of
changed his fucking life. I
kickboxing.
mean, that's what
Yeah.
the check-in is about, man. It's more about checking into his lifestyle and all that stuff because
I know a bit about this because I've seen some of the
Yeah.
episodes of this new show.
but it's
So
not bad, eh?
It's entertaining, yeah.
Yes.
But the best is that his co-host that used to be his producer on the fucking old podcast, Lee Sayat, the transformation that this guy had, he used to be his producer, but they would get him so fucking stoned. This guy did not know what was going on, and they were taking like over 1,000 milligrams of edibles,
Everything.
and-
Man. It was great.
and he fucking lost like 100 pounds since he stopped. Speaking of Tom Segura, he made a comment about this on a podcast. He's like that guy would have died if he fucking stayed with Joey Diaz. Like, he's like, the way that guy was, like, life was headed, he's like,
They were just giving it. They were having fun with him too.
yeah,
right?
no, I know. He would just
Yeah.
feed him whatever the fuck, like, he would, like, the amount of drugs they would take and then do that podcast. Apparently his producing, like, his eyes weren't even open half the time. It was like JT doing a podcast. It was ridiculous. Like, it was, I mean, he was getting into conversations like JT
maybe
does.
that's right. Maybe that's what I was learning. Right,
But-
I was learning from.
But since then, Joey's moved back to New York at during the pandemic, and like Jay said, they've started this new podcast where they call it check-in with each other, where they get on video and they catch up with one another.
But sometimes going back and listening to Uncle Joey's, right?
Those were wild shows.
Those were wild.
Those were
crazy
wild
episodes,
shows.
man.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why they never were pointed out specifically, because they were wild shows like that. The stuff they would talk about, sometimes the drugs they would do. I don't think it was just eat. I don't think it was. I think they were on some other stuff too.
Oh no, he did.
He's
He's
done
done
mushrooms,
shrooms on the show. No, they've talked about it before. Yeah, I've seen those clips. I've seen them.
It was kind of
Acid.
scary at one
They
point.
did acid one time on the show.
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know if I was going back to I was going to originally listening for it in case something happened like that where he died in the fucking episode. Like, or you know what I mean? Like, he got, because it's like an Artie Lang situation too, almost, when you think about it.
Yeah,
they get him.
He's still alive.
So fucked up.
He's
I know.
still alive.
I know.
But
that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
it's almost that same sort of.
Yeah,
to keep him funny, they were keeping him fucked up.
Well, with them during the pandemic, he stopped doing stand-up shows. He stopped doing stand-up. And he stopped doing the podcast like during that time. And he said he was just like, having a rough go. He had a rough go of it. And he also said he hated LA all of a sudden. And he just he didn't like it there anymore. So he moved back to New York.
Hot, yeah.
So this is kind of like the return to podcasting, and you can tell like this shows would basically be like if we ended Late Night Chat Network, and then like me and Jay one day were just like, hey, you want to chat online?
Yeah, and I sobered up and
Yeah.
I fucking started talking about meditation and shit.
That'll be us in like 10 years and roll.
Should be now, bro. To be honest with you, fuck the 10 years, man. Like I don't got 10 years.
Well, you're already.
I'm already halfway there.
Yeah. So no, good pick though. That's a good one.
No,
the check-in it's called, right?
Yeah. Because I remember last year I had Uncle Joey's, because I liked it, man. It was fucking funny.
He's very entertaining.
He can talk by himself and just be entertaining. That's the good thing about it.
You know how you said like you don't know how you could have gotten away with some of the shit that used to do it? It's because like that show was before podcasts were a big thing. They were doing that. Like that's why. Like them and like Rogan and stuff like that. This is like before the days of like podcasts blowing up. This is why like they had over thousands of episodes, these shows, right?
I thought about that too.
Yes.
Before, because I was wondering, I'm going, how do these guys have like fucking 1400 episodes?
Because Rogan loves Joey Diaz, and he used to go on the Rogan show and say the fucking craziest shit too, right? Like, and just like about his lifestyle, like back in the day, like how he used to rob people and like fucking, you know what I mean, be involved with mob shit and stuff like that. Like sometimes, or have people he was a bookie, or you know what I mean? Like he actually lived that life. Like that's what's so interesting about him. And then he just fell into the whole comedy thing, right? Like he's
comedy is just like natural to him. It's almost like it's not even so much that it's comedy. It's that it's just the way he naturally speaks, like that fucking type of Brooklyn, New York style. He's not even a WAP. He's got Cuban and fuck.
Yeah, he's kind of like he kind of
Cuban in him.
He is kind of like I hear what you're saying though. Yeah, he's Cuban. Yeah.
But he's got that sort of fucking mob mentality, like that way he talks, and just that makes him funny. The way he describes and he's very descriptive in certain.
Yeah, he's been in The Sopranos. He's been on the fucking The Sopranos movie. He's been the character in those films.
So
right?
it's a trip, man. But just to know every year that he's still going, he's still alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Joey Diaz. Good pick. So my what are we at now? Number 3, I think.
Podcasters seem like they're all gonna fucking die.
We're just sitting here doing fuck all. Not too
eating and fucking drinking,
not
sitting.
Not too much to say on this one. My number 3 is which I'm surprised didn't make Lewis's list this year, because I know this was on his list last year. He's actually one of the people I talked about this show with in the past. And that's Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
The redheads one? No.
Yeah, he's a redhead. Conan O'Brien, of course, late night late night talk host for years. He now has kind of started doing more of like his own podcast network and shows and stuff online. And this is kind of, you get like an hour and a half interviews, unfiltered type shit, not like you have like on talk shows where it's like a quick, tight 10 to 15 minute kind of panel interview that kind of feels like a bullshit conversation on these talk shows, right? That's what's so great about podcasts. And this is actually, again, giving Conan an opportunity to actually get into great, again, comedic conversations with guests on his show. And again, this is one of those shows where I mostly check out depending on the guest, but he always has really great guests, especially this past year. I thought he had some great ones. I mean, like I mentioned, he had Arnold Schwarzenegger on there. Bill Hader, I think, returned this past year, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He even had his old writing partner, what's his name? Smigel. I forgot his first name, something Smigel. The guy who's like the voice of Triumph the Insult Dog, right? Like, so he opened up the show, because that was a bit that's Robert Smigel, who is a comedy writer, right? And he's had some great comedy writers that he's worked with on SNL and on his show, and they talk about all the old bits, and they get into the nitty gritty, like kind of stories about like how they came up with certain jokes and bits and stuff like that. So just great conversations. Honestly, that Robert Smigel episode just came out a couple weeks ago. Fucking hilarious, because he opened up the show with the fucking Triumph the Insult Dog. He does like the first like 15 minutes, it's him as the insult dog. Just he does like a whole intro where he just insults fucking Conan like for 10 minutes. It's fucking great. It's great. It's great stuff.
That's good. That bit's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's funny. Yeah, if you remember that one. Yeah, because of course that started on the Conan O'Brien show, and then of course most people
on fucking America Movie Awards.
That's right, with the
awards.
Eminem situation that happened too, right? Which they had a whole little thing going on, those two, at one point, right? He kind of pushed him out of the way, and then they made a bit about it the year after together, right? So like, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah,
funny
the
stuff.
love-hate
Yeah,
relationship.
funny stuff. So yeah, Conan O'Brien needs a friend. Always a good time. Always a funny conversation. I think. Not only does he like to have laughs with folks, he actually is a really great interviewer and asks actually really thoughtful questions, I think, like, as well. Yeah. And
And he does make guest appearances on other shows too. So where he where other
yeah, I've heard him on
podcasts.
Smart List.
He was
I've
on
heard the
Smart
Smart
List
List
because they're
episode.
all
Yeah,
friends, right?
of course. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
all
yeah.
fucking friends, man. It's a joke.
I just love his persona of like how much of an asshole like person that he is, and like how is into himself he is, like
Oh, yeah.
that's like his whole him as a talk show host persona, and when he taps into that, it's fucking hilarious, right?
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
No, it's. I can imagine. I know. I did listen to him on the
Yeah,
Smart List.
that's his shtick, you know.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but go ahead.
That's how you're a good comic.
What's your number two?
I had the Bears, the two Bears, man. Even though I was listening to different fucking guys this whole year, off and on, it was really hard, man. Like,
Yeah.
I know everything's going on with them and stuff like that. So you get, obviously I've been listening to stuff that you probably have already listened to, older stuff from them.
Right.
But I've also been listening to the newer stuff where it's just either one or the other talking.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this a little while ago.
Yeah.
At work. So it's weird, man. I want to see them back on doing their shit like all the time now, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It'd be nice for them to, and I mean, we've talked enough about this two bears in one cave, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I keep seeing Tom Segura pop up for fucking the comedy shows like on Ticketmaster, whatever.
Yeah.
Like he's going everywhere too, right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's the deal.
Oh, they're still very popular. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still still their episodes just keep going and piling
and
up.
the shows are still okay. I just think it took a dip in terms of quality
But,
this year,
yeah,
right? But yeah,
even
that's
listening Bert lose weight and everything like that and get into a little bit of shape.
that's been good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. He
Yeah.
usually does the October thing, so I don't know what happened with that this year. But
Sober October. Yeah.
but I think he's been trying to keep off because that fucking you can't keep doing it for all so long. I know, like even
His issue is that it became his persona, though.
well, that
right?
became who he was,
Yeah.
right? And that's the hard part when you're the machine,
And then, well, that was his whole thing. I gotta constantly now take off my shirt, right? So you know what I mean. So
Well, they told him so many places not to take off his shirt. I think it was when he threw the first. Remember that one? They told him not to take it off, and he did. He took his shirt off for that opening pitch that we were talking about the other day.
Yeah.
And where you seen that whole slow motion. That's what made him want to change everything. Because when he said his fat didn't catch up to him in the picture, man.
so true though. It's a fucking hilarious picture.
Oh, that was a great picture.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
poor guy. It's embarrassing, but
Hey, listen.
that's him. He doesn't give a fuck. He's a comedian.
But yeah, good for him though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I made your list. Okay.
It did make it somewhere.
My number two, it came back honestly this year in a big bad way in the absence of us doing movie reviews. As you can tell, I already had one movie review
I was
podcast.
wondering. I haven't heard it from him.
Here,
I have a feeling you know what you're talking about.
The one that we used as our that we ripped off basically for our show. And that's the Rewatchables with Bill Simmons, of course, sports writer Bill Simmons, of course, who's also worked in TV and sports columns and stuff like that in the past, who has his own podcast network, The Ringer, on Spotify. He does a show called The Rewatchables with mainly him and his co-host Chris Ryan, who's like my favorite, and Sean Fennessy. That's kind of like the main three. But he also has a few other people that kind of come on episodes throughout the year too that work for the Ringer podcast. Like they work on other shows normally, but they'll come in and they get tagged in to kind of do a couple of movies throughout the year and stuff like that. So, but it's mainly, I think most of the time it's him and the Chris Ryan guy, and then a third person. Or just those two. But yeah, they just do a great job. We did fucking, when we did our show, when we did Late Night at the Movies, we did kind of copy some of the categories in terms of we took inspiration.
Yeah, because you know what, you can't really pick any other things.
And
right?
we can't copy in terms of structure or what they do either, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that they're their own thing, but we
Yeah.
definitely took inspiration in terms of some of the categories when we were putting our podcast together here. Late Night at the Movies, which again has been on hiatus this year because we've been doing the Watching the Throne, right? We kind of end up falling into that after taking a break on the Late Night at the Movies, right? But we did 3 straight years of doing Late Night at the Movies alongside Late Night Chat. We were doing those monthly, right? We have 35 episodes, right? So just under 3 years worth of shows that we did Late Night at the Movies monthly, right? And those were a lot of fun. But then I feel like after we were doing them, I stopped listening to this show as much. And then this past year, when we stopped doing them, they started doing a lot of really great movies. And not only that, they actually started uploading actual videos of them talking about the movies in studio this year as well. I don't know, they were recording them, but then they weren't uploading them, or they stopped uploading them apparently. And then there was a bunch of episodes that were like recorded obviously during pandemic where they weren't together. So like for whatever reason, because I saw somebody mention it in the comments of one of their videos, they re-uploaded or started uploading a bunch of their shows this year onto YouTube where they are doing it live. So before, where I would only listen it to audio, I actually revisited some episodes and actually seen them talking in person about these movies at a table, kind of like what we do. And it was a lot of fun to see them because sometimes they do like their own impersonations of some of the quotes and stuff in the film, and to actually see them talk in person and stuff like that, and actually see the people that I was listening to just in audio, it was kind of interesting to see it that way, honestly. So it kind of gave me like a whole different aspect of the show that I haven't experienced.
Video of the actual movies up on.
They sometimes cut clips into the conversations that they're having when they're doing the movies. Yeah, but it's mostly just them in studio talking the categories of the film, right? So yeah, so shout out to the Rewatchables podcast. They've had a really great year of movies. It's been coming out weekly, and the fact that they've started uploading videos of that weekly show as well has been a different aspect of the show for me, and revisiting it this year when we stopped doing our show basically of reviewing older movies that we enjoy, right? And like I said, that it kind of gave me the inspiration to start doing our own one 3 years ago, this show. So the fact that I was able to revisit it this year, it's been great.
Good, no?
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead, Jay, your number one podcast of the year. No surprise.
Yeah, bro. I my number one was Smartless, man. I it made me go back and watch a lot of stuff. Maybe not just watch their podcast, but some of their TV shows and stuff like that. I mean, I've always been a fan of Jason Bateman, right?
Sure.
And I thought, okay, let's see what this whole Will Arnett's about, right? And all that. And so I got so into it that I actually went back and started watching Lego Masters, for fuck's sakes. And I'm loving that show for some sick reason, man. I don't know what it is, but I'm actually liking it.
Sure.
I don't know what, but yeah, so that's a whole nother story. But yeah, no, Smartless and their conversations. I found out how they kind of all know each other. I think Will and Sean are more friends than they were more friends and Bateman and Will. So everybody's connected through Will, sort of thing. And then they finally made a full loop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they made it a threesome. Sean took over. Yeah, no, but yeah, they're great. They're just great comedians together. They can fucking talk about their own lives and their shit that goes on in their own lives. And I liked how they did those few live videos of it.
Yeah.
Where you can watch, and they were the really important guests. Those are the ones that you knew were gonna make money.
Right.
They were to bring out a live audience.
Right.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point, doesn't matter who they bring out live, they're gonna make a big scene. And I just think the acting. He's been a child star. He's just too funny because he's like, you think about it. He's like a spoiled kid.
Jason
Still,
Bateman.
yeah, at 50 something years old, he's like a big kid, big spoiled kid because he is a child star.
Yeah.
And he's been a child star all his life. Fuck, he got to drive the Knight Rider car, man. Who gets to drive the Knight Rider car? He got to drive the Knight Rider car like, hey, yeah, man. He's fucking crazy that way. But,
right.
And then you got Will Arnett, that's just a Canadian boy, finally making his way into comedy down there. And then you got Sean. You know what's the sad part is I've watched Will and Grace, so I don't have to go back and watch that kind of stuff. I watched it when it was out. It was too funny.
Yeah.
But I've actually made me go back, like I told you, and watch Arrested Development.
I love Arrested Development. Yeah, I love Arrested Development.
So I don't know, man. It's made me go to go back to do.
I'm glad you finally watched that because I was just like, oh, you never seen this show? It's fucking hilarious. It's
but I still I still take it at a couple of shows at a time because I don't need to see so much comedy all the time at once. But
you're weird like that. I don't understand that.
I like serious stuff, man. I mean,
You're
so
a very
sometimes
serious
I'm a
guy.
very serious guy, man. I'm not serious in my real life. That's probably why I like serious stuff to watch, man.
This guy.
So who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. I think we should do a review on Arrested Development season at a time, bro.
I don't think there'd be much to say, but I would laugh at like the specific
I
jokes.
mean, I've always
yeah,
wanted a segue.
yeah. The segues, yeah. Job
Joe.
and his segue, yeah.
Oh my god. Sorry, that
He's my favorite on that show, man. Like
I can't. You can't. How can you not?
the best. I don't know if you've seen the gag. I've made this joke before, but you probably wouldn't get there. You wouldn't have gotten the references. He has a joke on the show where he ends up going to the company and he's trying to like is because his father's in jail, obviously, and he starts to try to work at the company.
Yeah.
And Jason Bateman is running things always at the company, and he's just like, "What are you doing here?" He's, "Oh, I work here now. I'm your boss or whatever." And like he comes in, he's rocking like a suit. I guess that was his dad's. He's like, "Oh," he's like, "Watch out!" Somebody like bumps into him. He almost got coffee on my $500 suit, and then you see it like it cuts to like him in different scenarios of like him almost dirtying his suit, and each time it gets more and more expensive. He's like, "Oh, you almost touched my $1,000 suit." He's like, "Whoa, my $1,500 suit." I don't know. It's just like it always made me fucking laugh. I'm just like,
That's kind of funny. That kind of.
he's such an asshole on their show, though. He's so like full of himself, and he's a fucking magician. It's fucking hilarious, man.
Didn't one of your favorite, one of your not our favorite, but one of the directors or something, or or brothers of some sort,
Yeah.
direct some of
Yeah. The guys that went on to work on Marvel movies. Yeah. The Russo brothers. The Russo brothers started out on Arrested Development.
Well, it's funny because they interviewed
in Avengers. In Avengers, I think Endgame. I think it's Endgame. It's one of the ones they worked on because I think they worked on two. Maybe Civil.
I think it was Endgame because I remember the conversation.
Maybe Civil War. So I think it's Endgame. It may have been Civil War, but I think it's Endgame. There's a scene where you see the fucking blue like staircase car. Like Ant-Man, he grows right into a giant man. Like he kind of
the elevator thing.
Yes, it's in the scene. I think steps on it or something, or it gets like tossed to the side.
Airplane. Yeah, it goes to the airplane.
Yeah. But he ends up having to use it as the family car because Jason Bateman doesn't have a fucking car, so he has to drive around with the fucking steps on the back of his car. If anybody's never seen Arrested Development, you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Anyways, bro, it's in the Avengers movie because it's a shout out to fucking the show. They were the directors, and they put it in the scene. It's
like, what do they call that? Those Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I remember seeing that in theaters. I caught it. I was like, that's fucking hilarious because I knew about the Russos because they worked on and the Russos, which are actually going to pop up later in I think someone's category here tonight for a film they did. They also worked on that movie with Chris Hemsworth as well, Extraction. They also did that.
They did the Extraction, but the first one, I don't know if they did both.
They did. Oh, maybe not the second, but they did the first.
The second one kind of sucked, but yeah, that's another story.
May have made someone's list. Watch it. All right. Anyways, okay, good stuff. So Smart. Anything else to say about Smartless?
You know what, man? No, they're just the chemistry. Like I said, man, I wish fucking every day could be like that for people, man.
Yeah.
Just the chemistry they have between each other, the wholeheartedness, the fucking friendship, the fucking, and that's what it's about. And they actually just recently made like a thing saying the podcasts are good for everybody in a sense.
Absolutely.
And
gives you a reason to get together and do something honestly positive and productive, and especially absolutely. No, it's true. It's true. It could be a very good thing. We've had great times doing it.
Oh yeah.
I think I would like to say at our best in terms of the chemistry and stuff like that, we hit those highs too, honestly. But it's just
it took away from our friendship, but yeah, it took it's a weird balance.
But that's the thing. It's also one of those things where like sometimes it adds to the friendship because maybe there wouldn't be too much of a friendship there outside of it. Sadly, not to say that we wouldn't hang out, but it actually gives us a reason to get together, right? Because and not only that, would
you spend this much time with me?
Probably not. No. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. I mean, I'm just being honest. But no, but like,
too, bro.
That's the thing. There's that thing going around that I sent it. It was like a funny meme or something, or like a thing that I was on the internet where it was just like, guys who can just get together to hang out without having to do a podcast, right? I think I said it was fucking
No, I
hilarious.
don't think it was me.
Oh, I did not send it to you. I think I
Nah.
sent it to Christina and Lewis because like they sent me something funny. She sent me and Lewis something about some podcast they making,
Send it to everybody.
cracking
saying,
jokes
"This
about
is-
us.
This is me and JT.
But it was more to poke fun at like the thing that again it was on the internet was the fact that guys can just get together and hang out. They don't have to do a podcast to talk. They have to find a reason to talk, right?
You know, it actually makes sense.
And it made
yeah.
me laugh. I was just like,
Yeah.
that's hilarious, right? So,
It's so true.
anyways,
Because I've always used that to you, that line. I was like, it's something that you can pick up a phone call and just fucking talk.
yeah, but that's why I think we've made an effort to get together outside of doing the podcast too with everybody, right? I
So
think that's
it's-
important.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I watch movies with this guy. I went to watch movies with
Right.
this guy. Yeah, what
So-
a year. That's all I get.
So,